Imagine this. You're standing in a crowded room. Faces all around you, smiling, nodding, laughing, performing. Everyone looks like they belong. They speak with ease, their postures are relaxed, and their confidence radiates like heat from a fire you're not sure you're invited to stand beside. You scan the space for a point of entry, somewhere to insert yourself. You crack a smile, nod at the right moments, mimic the rhythm, speak when expected. And yet, something gnaws beneath the surface, a subtle hollowness, a question that flickers like static at the edge of your mind. Am I really confident? Or just playing the part well enough to fool them and maybe myself? Now lock eyes with a stranger across the room. They're not loud, they don't seek approval. Their presence doesn't demand attention, it commands it. Not through charm or bravado, but something quieter, something more dangerous. There's a stillness about them, like a predator who doesn't need to roar. A certainty that seems immovable. They could dismantle your assumptions with a single sentence, and yet they remain silent. What is that? It's not arrogance, not narcissism, not even charisma. It's something deeper, something colder, something older than modern self-help platitudes or motivational slogans. It is what Niccolò Machiavelli recognized centuries ago. In the halls of power and the theater of war, the most powerful trait of the truly confident isn't self-belief, it's detachment. Not indifference, not apathy, but a calm, calculated distance from the emotional noise that enslaves most people. The fear of being disliked, the desperation for recognition, the addiction to reassurance. This person, the one whose eyes are still on yours, has none of it. They could walk away from you, from this room, from everything, without blinking. And that, paradoxically, is what makes them irresistible. But here's the paradox that rips through the illusion of modern confidence. What if true power doesn't come from how much you believe in yourself, but from how little you need to? What if the real alpha, the real sovereign, is not the loudest in the room, but the one most free from it? What if the need to be seen, heard, praised, validated is the very thing that reveals your weakness? You've been told confidence is about knowing your worth, about affirmations, posture, success. You've been told to be bold, to fake it till you make it, to chase goals and accumulate evidence of your greatness. But what if all of that is a trap, a treadmill of self-construction that only strengthens your prison bars? What if the highest form of confidence is not adding more to who you are, but subtracting everything you thought you needed to be? Now step back for a moment. Ask yourself, why do you feel uneasy when someone disapproves of you? Why do you feel the urge to defend your value, to prove your competence, to matter? Why does the silence of that person, the one who didn't need anything from you, echo louder than the applause you sometimes chase? What if the true test of confidence isn't how you act when you're praised, but how unmoved you remain when you're ignored? There's a kind of power so quiet, it unsettles those who rely on performance. A confidence that is untouchable because it isn't rooted in feedback. It doesn't rise or fall with applause. It is sovereign, self-contained, beyond reach. And here lies the uncomfortable truth. Most people you think are confident are just better at hiding their dependency. Machiavelli observed the rulers of Renaissance Italy, princes, warriors, manipulators, and saw it clearly. Power belongs not to those who control others, but to those who control themselves. Not through brute force, not through charm, but through a ruthless clarity of purpose and a psychological distance from the emotional chaos of others. To master this detachment isn't easy. It requires you to amputate parts of yourself that crave comfort, to destroy illusions that have protected you since childhood, to become in many ways more dangerous, not to others, but to the systems that once owned your mind. And so the question you must now face isn't, how do I become more confident? It is something far more terrifying. What part of me must I be willing to kill to become untouchable? This is not about being yourself. This is about disentangling yourself from everything that makes you weak. And once you begin, there's no turning back. Because the moment you stop needing to be confident is the moment you become truly powerful. Now let's look at why this illusion exists. Why so many believe confidence is about being full, when the truth is it's about being empty of need. To understand that, we must go deeper into the psychological and philosophical roots of this trap. The illusion of confidence is a masterpiece of social engineering, a carefully constructed mirage designed to keep the majority chasing shadows, reflections of worth that always shimmer just out of reach. You were born into a world already scripted. Before you formed language, you were being taught the unspoken rules: please others, be liked, avoid rejection, fit in. The approval of others was your first currency. And so, like everyone else, you began crafting a mask, not because you were dishonest, but because it was necessary for survival. But here's the root of the disease. The more skilled you become at performing confidence, the more distant you become from ever possessing it. Why? Because the performance is dependent. It's reactive. It's driven by external stimuli. Praise becomes your drug, recognition your mirror. And suddenly your confidence becomes a castle built on sand, impressive until the applause stops. Carl Jung called this the persona. the social mask you wear to function in the world. But behind it always lurks the shadow, the parts of you deemed unacceptable, unworthy, dangerous. Your need to be seen as strong is often rooted in a deep fear of being exposed as fragile. And so you build. You build the image of success, the charming persona, the curated identity. But Jung warns, the stronger your persona, the more violent your shadow becomes. That is, the more you chase confidence as an image, the more fragile you become when it is threatened. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this coming. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he describes the last man, a creature of comfort, conformity, and safety. This last man avoids all real risk. He smiles, he nods, he consumes. But his soul is anesthetized. His confidence is synthetic, manufactured by trends, likes, and temporary distractions. He never dares to become truly powerful because he fears what he must destroy in the process, his dependency. Nietzsche wasn't romanticizing suffering. He was demanding authenticity. And authentic confidence is born not in validation, but in the crucible of isolation, of confrontation, of spiritual violence. Arthur Schopenhauer took it further. For him, the will to live, the core of all human striving, was cursed. We are insatiable, always wanting, always needing. Even our confidence is a form of grasping. Grasping at control, at certainty, at meaning. But Schopenhauer saw the madness of this loop and proposed a terrifying truth. The only way to be free is to want nothing. Now think about that. How confident would you be? Not if you gained the world, but if you no longer needed it. Modern psychology echoes this ancient insight. The term is external locus of control, the belief that your outcomes are determined by forces outside yourself. The more external your locus, the more unstable your confidence. You'll be at the mercy of compliments, promotions, relationships, status symbols. You'll be confident only when things go your way. But true confidence, Machiavellian in nature, is internal, unshakable, sovereign. It doesn't swell with success, and it doesn't collapse with criticism, because it doesn't come from outside at all. This kind of confidence is not warm, it is not soft, it is terrifyingly cold-blooded, not because it lacks empathy, but because it is forged in the fires of disillusionment. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that existence precedes essence. You are not born with a purpose, you create it. But this freedom, he warned, is unbearable for most. Why? Because creating your own value means you cannot hide behind the approval of others. You are responsible for your worth, entirely. No excuses, no safety net, and most people would rather remain dependent than carry that burden. This is why you see so many people trapped in cycles of overcompensation, hyperproductivity, obsession with self-image, validation loops on social media. They chase symbols of confidence because they've never met its core. And what is that core? Detachment from the need for affirmation. Viktor Frankl, surviving the horrors of Auschwitz, discovered that even in the most inhuman conditions, meaning could be found. But it was never in the environment, it was in the response, in the refusal to surrender one's inner world to the chaos of the outer one. That's real power, that's real confidence. To embody this kind of psychological sovereignty, however, you must confront a terrifying truth. Most of what you believe about yourself was designed by someone else. Your values? Inherited. Your goals? Marketed. Your insecurities? Exploited. And your confidence? Programmed to keep you compliant, just strong enough to function, but never strong enough to rebel. This is why true confidence is rare. Not because it's difficult to cultivate, but because it requires burning everything false to the ground, including your ego, including your identity, including every illusion that made you feel safe. So the hidden problem isn't just that you're performing confidence, it's that you've never asked who benefits from your performance. Answer that and you will begin to see the invisible cage you've been living in. And when you see the cage, the next question becomes unbearable. What happens if I walk away from everything I thought made me valuable? Before we can answer that, we must go even deeper into the consequences. Because this psychological dependence doesn't just harm you internally, it distorts everything you touch, your relationships, your ambitions, your self-worth. It turns your life into a theater, and your soul into a servant of applause. And you may not even realize it's happening. Let's expose the full cost. You don't notice it at first. That's the genius of it. The trap isn't built with bars, it's built with mirrors. And every time you look for validation, you think you're seeing progress, when in reality, you're seeing your own captivity reflected back at you. Let's pull back the curtain. You walk into a conversation. You tailor your words to be agreeable. You present the polished version of yourself, the one optimized for approval. You tell a story, but not the real one, just the one that lands well, the one that earns nods. It feels like connection. It feels like influence. But it's dependency in disguise. Because the moment someone withdraws their approval, you feel it. That sick twist in the gut, that tightening in your chest, that instinctive panic. What did I do wrong? And so you adjust, you soften the edges, you contort. Again and again. This is the cost of needing to be seen. It isn't just emotional, it's existential, and it gets worse. Because when your confidence is tethered to reaction, your entire identity becomes negotiable. You can be high on praise in the morning and shattered by silence at night. You live in a psychological casino, pulling the lever, waiting for a hit of significance, and your mind adapts. Neurologically, your brain is addicted to dopamine, the chemical of reward, novelty, affirmation. Every like, every compliment, every nod of approval triggers a microdose. You become chemically wired to seek external feedback. The neural pathways deepen. Your default becomes chase, respond, perform, repeat. You mistake this for growth, but what you're really developing is a dependency loop. Even Maslow's hierarchy of needs, once a model for human flourishing, reveals this trap. The need for esteem, when unbalanced, becomes a black hole. When your sense of self-worth is rooted in being admired, you are forever at the mercy of others' perception. It begins to bleed. In your relationships, you compromise your standards to keep someone interested. You tolerate disrespect to avoid abandonment. You become overly agreeable, not out of kindness, but out of fear. In your career, you avoid confrontation to protect your image. You overwork not because of passion, but to earn significance. You stay quiet in meetings when you disagree, because being seen as likable matters more than being real. In your ambitions, you don't pursue what you truly desire. You pursue what is admired. You shape your goals to fit what society rewards. Your success becomes a costume, not a conquest. And worst of all, in your inner world, you forget who you are when no one is watching. Carl Jung warned that a man who is not conscious of his unconscious will be ruled by it. And here your unconscious has been hijacked by applause, by recognition, by the terrifying belief that you are only as good as your image. The Machiavellian mind sees this and does not flinch because he knows dependence on perception is weakness, and weakness invites control. Look around you. Why are so many people manipulable? Why do they fall for shallow trends, hollow ideologies, toxic leaders? Because they've been trained to outsource their confidence. And anything outsourced can be weaponized. This is why political regimes, corporations, cults, even romantic manipulators, all use the same tactic. They dangle validation as bait. Praise you when you conform, withdraw it when you rebel, push you toward dependence. They don't need chains. They just need your insecurity. Now let's add another layer. You begin to censor yourself, not just publicly, but internally. You silence your instincts, you question your gut, you override your intuition, you become split, the self you are and the self you sell. Over time, this fracture deepens. It breeds anxiety, imposter syndrome, burnout, not because you're broken, but because you're living a double life. And deep down you know it. This is where the existential despair sets in, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet erosion. The sense that you are drifting further and further from yourself, that no matter how much you accomplish, it never feels like enough, that your image grows stronger while your soul grows weaker. But here's the darkest part. Society rewards this behavior. You'll be promoted for it, admired for it, celebrated for how well you've learned to play the game. But what they're really rewarding is your compliance. You've learned how to perform the role of the confident modern individual, assertive, driven, well-adjusted, but all of it is conditional. Conditional on the crowd, the market, the algorithm, the applause. And if it's conditional, it's not confidence, it's dependency and drag. Now imagine what you're missing. Imagine a life where your sense of worth doesn't rise and fall with compliments, where your truth doesn't need to be watered down to be palatable, where you can walk into a room and feel no urgency to be liked, because you know who you are even when no one else does. That life exists, but it cannot be reached through more performance. It must be earned through destruction. Destruction of the mask, destruction of the dependency, destruction of the false self you built to be accepted. And that destruction will feel like death. But it is not. It is the beginning of sovereignty, the most powerful kind of confidence. Machiavellian, unshakable, cold and free, isn't given to you. It isn't practiced. It isn't performed. It is forged in the refusal to play the game. But how? How do you break free from the invisible system that has shaped your entire psyche? How do you strip away what isn't real and step into a version of yourself no longer tied to performance, praise, or perception? You must rebel, and that rebellion begins now. You've spent years being sculpted, not by your own hands, but by invisible expectations, by cultural scripts, by familial guilt, by the magnetic pull of praise and the sting of rejection. You didn't ask for this programming, but it's there, etched deep into your nervous system. Now imagine setting fire to it all, not with rage, with precision. This is the beginning of your rebellion. not with fists raised, but with one terrifying decision: to stop needing what they've convinced you to crave: approval, belonging, recognition, validation. The Machiavellian mind does not destroy for destruction's sake. It destroys with purpose, to clear space, to reclaim sovereignty, to build a structure that cannot be toppled by trends or threats or flattery. And to begin that, you must first confront the soft lies that keep you obedient. Lie 1. You must be liked to be successful. False. You must be respected, and respect often comes at the cost of likability. The lion does not ask the gazelle for approval. True confidence means being willing to disappoint, to unsettle, to provoke discomfort, not recklessly, but strategically. Because if you always say what they want to hear, you'll never say what needs to be heard. Lie 2. Confidence comes from evidence. No, that's competence. Confidence is belief without evidence. It is the quiet internal decision to act as if you are enough, even when the world gives you no proof. It's a war against your need for permission, and the rebel wins by acting before he is validated. Lie 3. You need to fit in to survive. This was true as a child, but now, fitting in is the fast lane to mediocrity. You are not a child anymore, and survival is no longer the goal. Sovereignty is. To begin this transformation, you must do what most people fear more than death: face yourself without filters. That means stillness, silence, solitude. Not the trendy kind, the brutal kind. The kind that rips the mask from your face and forces you to sit with the questions you've been avoiding. Who am I without performance? What do I value when no one is watching? What would I pursue if I didn't need to be admired for it? Most will never ask these questions because they already know the answers will shatter them. But you're not most people. You're here, reading this, and something in you is ready to burn the old frame to the ground. So how do you break free? Step 1. Starve the false self. Every time you catch yourself tailoring your truth to be liked, stop. Let the silence fall. Let them misunderstand you. Let them disapprove, and feel the discomfort. Not as punishment, but as proof that your chains are breaking. Each act of honesty, especially when it costs you, is a cut in the rope of dependency. Step 2. Build in solitude. You will not find yourself in the crowd. You will not hear your true voice over the noise. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." Solitude isn't loneliness, it's recalibration. Go there, often. Journal, think, wrestle with yourself. You will emerge dangerous. Step 3. Practice intentional detachment. Let go of what you're clinging to. Not out of nihilism, but out of strength. Detachment is not rejection, it's transcendence. You don't need to hate money, praise, love, or success. You simply stop needing them. And in doing so, you become more powerful than those who chase them blindly. Step 4. Study those who broke the mold. Read Machiavelli, not the Disney villain version, but the realist who understood human nature without illusion. Read Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who held power in one hand and detachment in the other. Read Nietzsche, who asked not how to conform but how to become. Internalize their rebellion. Let it infect your blood. Step 5. Cultivate indifference to outcomes. This is the hardest part. The world tells you, set goals, visualize success, crush it. But what if you act without attachment to the result? What if you speak the truth, launch the idea, make the move, not because you expect applause, but because it is aligned with your code? That is power, that is freedom. And finally, step 6, create a personal code. When you no longer outsource your values, you must forge your own. A sovereign mind lives by principles, not feelings. Ask yourself, what do I stand for, even if no one stands with me? What truths will I speak, even if they cost me relationships? What version of myself will I protect, even if the world misunderstands me? Write it, keep it sacred. Live by it. Not because it makes you good, but because it makes you untouchable. This is the Machiavellian rebirth. Not ruthless domination, but ruthless self-honesty. Not manipulation of others, but liberation from the manipulation of self. And make no mistake, this rebellion will cost you. You may lose friendships built on mutual appeasement. You may be called cold, distant, intimidating. You may feel a kind of grief, as if a part of you is dying. And it is. But that death is holy. It is the funeral of the false self, the mask you wore to be accepted, the persona you crafted to be loved. Let it die, because on the other side of that death is something terrifyingly rare. A person who does not flinch, who does not beg, who does not bend. A person who can walk into the world full of noise and carry silence with them like a weapon. Not because they lack emotion, but because they no longer need it to survive. That is what makes them unstoppable. And now, you're close. Close to the final realization. The truth at the core of all power. the trait that cannot be learned, only remembered, the revelation that turns the mirror inward and changes the game forever. Let's go there now. What if you've been looking at confidence all wrong? Not as a flame to ignite, but as a cage to burn. Not as something you acquire, but something you strip away. You've peeled back layers, the mask, the need, the dependencies. You've tasted the quiet power of detachment. You've rebelled against the noise, the praise, the applause. And now you're standing at the edge of something deeper. Something that has no name but rewrites everything. You want the final answer. You want the core trait of the truly confident. So here it is. The truly confident are those who no longer ask the question. They don't wake up wondering, am I enough? They don't search rooms for proof. They don't chase the reflection of worth in other people's eyes, because they've realized the most dangerous, liberating truth of all. There is no self to prove. Let that sink in. Not as a metaphor, as a demolition charge. What if confidence doesn't come from building up a better version of yourself, but from seeing through the entire concept of self-image? You've been trained to view confidence as armor, but real power isn't armor, it's nakedness. The kind of raw presence that no longer flinches at exposure because there's nothing left to hide. You are not your story. You are not your performance. You are not the curated self you constructed for praise. You are consciousness itself, the observer behind the roles, the silence between the words. And the truly confident do not operate from identity. They operate from clarity. Here's what that looks like. When insulted, they don't defend because the insult hits nothing. When praised, they don't inflate because the praise inflates nothing. When rejected, they don't collapse because nothing was at stake. They are not detached because they are cold. They are detached because they have transcended the illusion that their value is on trial. This is the final liberation. The moment you realize there is no one to protect, no self-image to polish, no ego to guard, no audience to perform for. Just action, just intent, just will. This was Machiavelli's true insight. Not that people must manipulate others to gain power, but that the one who sees through the illusions of identity, validation, and approval cannot be manipulated at all. And that person, they don't act to be liked. They act because it aligns with their code. They don't fear failure because their worth is not riding on success. They don't seek dominance. They are already sovereign. Imagine living like this. Imagine walking into a negotiation, not as someone trying to win, but as someone who doesn't fear loss. Imagine ending a relationship, not from bitterness or blame, but from utter clarity. This no longer aligns with who I am becoming. Imagine saying no, not as resistance, but as revelation. I know what I serve, and it is not your opinion of me. Now ask yourself, can someone who needs nothing be controlled? Can someone who no longer clings to identity be insulted? Can someone who operates from clarity, not emotion, be broken? No. And that is the final paradox. The truly confident person is not full of self-belief. They are empty of self-illusion. And in that emptiness lies absolute power. It's the power of the samurai who accepts death before battle, and therefore fights without fear. It's the power of the Stoic emperor who governs without ego, because his worth is not tied to his crown. It's the power of the monk who owns nothing, yet walks with the calm of someone who owns himself. It is Machiavellian not in its cruelty, but in its detachment from illusion. It is philosophical not in theory, but in ruthless self-awareness. It is primal not in savagery, but in sovereignty. And now you see, confidence was never the goal. The goal was freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from performance, freedom from the lie that you must become something other than what you are to be whole. So where does this leave you? Here, now, alone with the truth that cannot be unlearned. You don't need to prove yourself because there is no self to prove. Only the moment, only the mission, only the path that calls to you, not because it earns applause, but because it burns with truth. And that path is narrow. Most won't walk it. They'll stay in the theater clapping for each other, reciting lines. They'll call you cold, they'll call you arrogant. Let them. The lion is never concerned with the opinions of sheep. So walk quietly, speak clearly, detach ruthlessly, love selectively, act deliberately, and never need. Because in that state you become the rarest force in the world, a human being who cannot be bought, broken, or swayed, a sovereign, a weapon wrapped in stillness, a mirror that terrifies the world, because it reflects freedom. And that is the most powerful trait of the truly confident.